As an FBI special agent was my dream job. My whistleblowing was apolitical and in the spirit of upholding my oath. Nonetheless, the FBI cynically elected to close ranks and attack the messenger.
The FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. We are all examples of that.
Joining us now are Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle. Thanks for joining us, fellas.
FBI whistleblowers Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle both join us now. Gentlemen, so glad to have you on the program. Thank you for your testimony.
We need more folks like you, and I'm sure more people going to be from your background are going to be giving you guys more intel as you're sharing that with the rest of us. We can kind of see that this is becoming normal for them to be held accountable, because I think especially an institution that we pay their salaries, they need to be held accountable.
I think a lot of people do share our beliefs and convictions. I think they just aren't at the point that Steve and I and others have gotten to. They're too afraid.
Thank you so much for being a guest here on PBD Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
How big is that bloody flag that Steve's got? It's the stone wall of his house. Lots of love, guys. Thanks very much for joining us.
Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle. Thank you for being with us this morning. More importantly, thank you for speaking out. We appreciate it.
You're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and pursue the truth with FBI whistleblowers and founding suspendables Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast on a Thursday. It's December 5th. And yes, I like the intro very much too. Thanks for joining us today, Kyle Serafin, seeing you in the chat. You are the voice of the Suspendables. For those who don't know, that's Kyle with the voice augmenter. I always get a kick out of listening to it as well. We thank you very much for joining us today on a Thursday. It's regular fare. It's 10:30 on the Eastern Seaboard. We got Garrett waiting in the hot seat, waiting on deck to come on as I prepare you all for what's coming up today. Today, we're asking, what more proof do you need? You know, there's been a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth from media types and politician types who I don't really care about because they're all communists, and I'm not really interested in calling them hypocrites or wondering if the shoe is on the other foot, or really concerned about what they think. But the argument has been put out there that a guy like Kash Patel should not be taken over the FBI. The FBI is not weaponized in any way, shape, or form. Certainly not going after anybody with a conservative bent. Who cares if 92% of those FACE Act violations are going against pro-lifers? Who cares if we censor the Hunter Biden laptop story to impact the presidential election after, of course, impacting the prior presidential election? Certainly nothing to concern ourselves with today. Well, today we brought the receipts. We're going to be bringing some of the stories that are recent, and then ones that might have slipped past the goalie, because we like to do that on the American Radicals Podcast. Things like the FBI just taking credit for stuff it didn't do. It's an old-fashioned FBI dunk session. We're going to get at it because it's not going to be long, maybe 6.5 weeks, until we get a new director, and we're not going to want to do that anymore. We're going to want to pump up the brand spanking new FBI under the directorship of Kash Patel when, I'm being positive, folks, when he makes it through the confirmation process. So all that to get to today. Let's bring on Garrett at GOB Actuals, where you find him on social media. He had his kids messing around with his tech this morning, but he's there. He's prompt. Are you ready? Or Garrett, I'm calling your name.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Am I going into the ether? I think you can hear me.
We've got you. We've got you. And I'm glad to have you, because normally when I'm in a pinch, this is just my go-to, because I've basically devoted my entire social media platforms, everything that I have, to sort of putting these stories out there, because if you know, I can read sort of between the lines of the press statements and the affidavits, and kind of, I speak government pretty fluently at this point. I know when they're throwing us BS, which is just about all the time, but they're really good about burying the lead, giving you the headline, knowing that people aren't going to have the patience or the temperament or even the baseline knowledge to be able to cut through the BS. But today you're here with me so we can laugh along at it. And I have a whole slew of examples, but really what I wanted to jump off with, and I'm not going to bring it up because it's from the Washington Examiner, and they are in a running gun battle with Just the News for the most annoying website. It's nothing but pop-ups.
Yeah. You like you start trying to scroll on your phone and you end up opening some ad for like, I don't know, Steven Ranella's newest book or something. And it's like,
I mean, I guess that's your search history. I'm getting like running shoes, but I have to buy a pair every 4 weeks, so that makes sense. But the Washington Examiner story I saw was about Jamie Raskin, communist congressman from Maryland, who really, when he's not playing a pirate on TV with the do-rag, is just out and out doing the Marxist thing. And he was talking about how the FBI isn't weaponized against Republicans. And he made a statement. I'll read the quote to you.
Sounds like
And
gaslighting to me.
if you toss out the fact that it is in fact communist uh, Jamie Raskin, he makes a fair point, right? So it's even better to read the quotation. So he says, well, undoubtedly, if you look at it historically, for example, during the counterintelligence program period, the FBI really was weaponized against Dr. King and the civil rights movement and the peace movement. There were decades of the FBI being basically used as a political instrument. And so I haven't seen what the proof is that the FBI has been weaponized against a political party or the Department of Justice. Of course, this Department of Justice has brought charges against a Democrat U.S. Senator in New Jersey and a Democratic congressman in Texas. Of course, both of them broke the law, but we'll throw out the second part of this quotation. He's totally right that the FBI was weaponized. I
Yeah.
think the point that I want to bring is you have the potential for that there and a willingness to do it. It just happens to be a different character or different
Yeah.
profile who they're going after now.
I'd have to go back into the history and see, but I can almost guarantee you, because of the nature of the FBI and government, that sure, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. were being targeted on one hand, but I'm sure some Republicans along the way were being targeted on the other that maybe you just didn't really hear about. Just for instance, the take January 6th, take us, which again, to everybody listening, me, Kyle, and Steve, none of us were super political, like ooh rah Republican types. We saw things that were wrong and maybe more aligned with traditional conservative values, and we spoke out, and then we were canceled for it. So it's not always a party line issue, but also with Jamie Raskin saying, "I don't see the evidence of this." Okay, well, what's it going to take? Is it going to take another 50 years where then the next Jamie Raskin will look back and say, "Oh yeah, we did target Republicans or conservatives then," because there's a litany of examples, and well, we've talked about COINTELPRO before, and that was wrong. Of course, that was wrong, and one of my favorite pieces about that is it took people breaking into an FBI office for us to even learn that it existed. And so I don't know. I have a hard time with the grandstanding from politicians saying, "Well, decades ago, we clearly targeted more democratic type of people."
That's okay, right?
And so,
It's just fine now. It's what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
yeah,
It's not like there's an actual objective line where we don't want to have secret police who are going after innocent Americans for their First Amendment protected activity, and even just perceiving the law as a tool that they can use to just target people. Right? It's I've said it before. Why do we have the laws? Do we have the laws to have a just society, to punish the evildoers, to protect the innocent? Or do we have laws so that the government has the ability to go after more people and they can say, you're getting close to the line there. Maybe if we reinterpret it, the line will actually be behind you. You know what happens if you're going up against the line? You're still in bounds. I've been watching some football games recently, and it seems like if you're just inside the line, then it counts as a catch. So that's perfectly legal. And the fact that the government is uncomfortable with that is their problem, not mine. But let's get to this because this was like about a week ago. I don't know if you saw this. I don't know if any of the audience saw it. Essentially, we have the track record of Christopher Wray doing the double middle birds to Senate and saying, "Hey, Senator, sorry, I can't answer your questions. I got to hop on an airplane here. It's at my beck and call, a private jet that I can go on a very important trip to the Adirondacks on
yeah.
vacation."
Let me
Um,
lie about my vacation.
but he just flat out refused to
Yeah,
go and
right.
testify last week,
I saw this. I was like,
which
"Oh, I didn't think it could get worse." Well, it got worse.
yes. So this comes from Headline USA, which is rapidly becoming Ken Silva. I like the stuff he's putting out there. He's
Mhm.
sort of the bizarro Trevor Aronson. Like he comes from the right side, whereas Trevor comes from the left. And they're both basically digging into a lot of the playbook things that we've been harping on. But Ken Silva writes, FBI Director Wray, DHS Secretary Mayorkas refused to testify before Congress. Well, Garrett, I mean, let's just play around with the idea. Why do you think that Christopher Wray might not want to come? Like, I mean, let's just go over recent history. We're not going to talk about COINTELPRO, or Waco. let's just go recent history, like the Hunter Biden laptop censorship. Might he be concerned that they would ask him questions about that? Has there been any accountability? Base Act violations, 92% against pro-life Christians. The EDU officials threat tag, going after parents at school board meetings. Radical traditional Catholic intelligence report in which no one faced any sort of consequence for, no firing, no suspensions. I don't even know if they got extra training. Child pornography, reassigning agents from VCAC to, that's violent crimes against children, to do surveillance of parents at school boards. Present, accounted for. Covenant Christian, they finally handed over the manifesto, the blueprint for Armageddon, right? That was, no, it was an ode to transgenderism and talking about white privilege. Still waiting on the Vegas shooting details. Undercovers and informants at January 6th, waiting for that update. Any more coming up? I mean, I'm pulling a smorgasbord here. I'll leave it up to you. Any other ideas that could possibly be?
Well, I just keep thinking of Jamie Raskin's do-rag because he told us, well, where's the evidence, Steve? Where is it? You just listed off like a dozen things, and regardless of, well, just like with the decades, the historical history of the FBI, because it's not just during the civil rights movement. It was Japanese in internment camps. It was communists, which again, as we talk about, we're relative absolutists when it comes to freedom of speech. So I don't think the FBI should have been rounding up people without probable cause and deporting them because they had a suspicion that they were communist. Oh, and also, by the way, I don't agree with communist beliefs. I think they're wrong, and I think they should be rooted out. And the prevailing ideology should come from people who are smarter and wiser, and historic precedents that shows that communism has never worked. But we shouldn't violate their civil rights. If you want to have bad ideas, you can have them.
You can have the ideas. There was actually, I think, a case to be made that going after the communists like J. Edgar Hoover was doing, they were infiltrating the actual government. They were attempting a soft coup, a soft overthrow of the United States system of government,
What
of
was
our
that?
Constitution.
What was that law they had, like the Communist Reduction Act or something like that? I forget exactly what it's called.
This sounds glorious.
It's
Can we bring it back?
I think it's still on the books, and it's like, well, can we use that?
Well,
Maybe we should.
If there's an executive assistant director friend or a Boyle, I think Jamie Raskin needs to have an assessment opened up on him. But back to why Christopher Wray didn't want to go testify. Actually relied on left-wing source, local news, the Tennessee Star, to perhaps proffer the reason for that. And it was pertaining to the pipe bomb investigation on January 6th. We're still waiting to find out. I mean, that award is still out there. My question is, if you point to the guy in the cubicle next to you inside of the FBI as being the perpetrator, do you get to collect the award? But did you know the phone companies actually came out and disputed what the FBI was saying, which is probably what Christopher Wray didn't want to answer for? So the cellular carriers, the way this worked, and anybody who's still unfamiliar with what the FBI did with January 6th, one of the main tools they used was the geofence. They dropped the geofence. That means they basically looked at every cell phone that was in that specific area, pinpointed it, and that was one of the tools they used to identify subjects, to actually use as evidence against them to say, look, geographically, this is where you were at that time on that date. So you would think it stands to reason that as long as they're using that tool, and we can question the legality and the constitutionality of it, but if it passes muster, why wouldn't you use the same tool for the one person at an obscure time of day, like 3 o'clock in the morning, in a remote location? They should be able to use the same tool to identify the person who actually engaged with a weapon of mass destruction. I mean, questions about viability, functionality, but be it as it may. And for all intents and purposes, this is actually a separate incident. It happened and it's been commingled with the narrative as being on the same day. So it's related to January 6th. There's always speculation, oh, well, was it a ruse to pull resources away from the Capitol to make it worse? But as it's being investigated, the pipe bomb is a separate investigation on its own. And it should be. That's the way you do law enforcement. But when they used the geofence, they were reporting, when I say they, I mean Stephen D'Antuono, said that the data was corrupted. Dagnabbit. Wouldn't you know it? A few hours later, it was spot on to get every single 85-year-old grandmother who was walking through the Capitol. But At that exact moment, the data was corrupted. Steve D'Antuono said the FBI received corrupted data from one of the cell carriers and that it most likely contained the identity of the pipe bomber.
You know
Huh.
what, Steve? That sounds highly coincidental. And one thing in my short-lived law enforcement career that I learned early on is you don't believe in coincidence. The guy that matches the description that's a block and a half away from the gas station that just got robbed is probably the guy. You should go stop him and talk to him
All right.
at a
I
minimum.
got to push pause because you just reminded me of a cop story that I have to tell real quick. I worked in the hood of Savannah, right? Predominantly African American area. Guys get into foot chases. When you get in a foot chase as a police officer, you're calling out the description of the subject so the help that's coming knows who to look for, direction of travel, all those sorts of things. And invariably, guy would be getting in a foot chase and he would scream, black male, white shirt, black male, white shirt. And I remember one time, white male, black shirt, and dispatch came over the air and said, "Are you sure about that?" Then it was acceptable because the dispatcher was black, but
Uh,
just made me laugh.
yes,
Anyway,
then it's okay.
back to the Tennessee Star. Cellular carriers, though, have told Congress that the data wasn't corrupted.
I want to
So
know
they
why it took them so long. That's my one question. Or did it just get released recently, and people in Congress have known longer? But I have my questions there because it's okay. I'm glad that that information is out because when we first learned of this, I think anybody with, I don't know, like one or two brain cells that they could rub together was thinking that seems not like an actual thing that would happen. But okay, Steve D'Antuono, you're from the FBI and you're a highfalutin, high-ranking SES member of it, and you're testifying, and allegedly you have to tell the truth when you do that. So we're gonna believe you.
that isn't on par with Jeffrey Epstein hanging himself from a height of about 4 feet off the ground when all the security cameras were turned off and the guards fell asleep.
Mm.
It's to that level of
Yeah.
absurdity.
I scrolled past it, but I just saw Maureen Comey, James Comey's daughter, everybody, if you didn't know. She was the main prosecutor on the Epstein case. She's on some other one right now. I forget which. But she filed some motion. I think it was actually from Ken Silva where I saw this too. She filed some motion in the Epstein case to not have the list released because of some made up safety concern or whatever. And it's like pretty sure that list is going to get released as long as hashtag cash only becomes the FBI director. I'm pretty sure the American people are gonna finally start learning some things that we all should have been privy to for years, if not decades or longer. Because I have a feeling there's a lot in those files that were overclassified or hidden or subverted on purpose. Just like Christopher Wray subverting his own testimony that I thought Congress had a statutory requirement of oversight for places like the FBI. But these days, the FBI director can show up for many years and just lie and go on vacation in the middle of a hearing and lie about that even and not be held accountable. And now, well, he can just not show up because rules for thee and not for me.
And that's a perfect way to put it for this other one. I actually want to get some eyeballs to a story that friend of ours, Amy Nelson, put out
Mm,
about a week ago in Uncover DC. She's become a huge advocate on behalf of doing away with civil asset forfeiture. And her experience, for
yeah.
those who don't remember it, her husband worked for Amazon for about 7 years, and then they left, and he started doing his own thing with real estate. And then one day during the coronavirus lockdowns, the feds show up at her house, and they basically seize all of their assets, and they threatened to charge him with honest services fraud. And it came out because Amy Nelson is an actual attorney and dogged and refused to let her husband bend the knee, that in fact, Jeff Bezos and other executives in Amazon were involved in some sort of weird real estate deal. In order to get out of this deal, they had to have some sort of criminality occur. They had to have people who were charged with crimes. So they went and lobbied over 100 times the Department of Justice to bring charges. They brought charges against her husband and a couple of others, and they were able to get some of these other guys, to actually plead guilty because they didn't do what Amy did. And even though her assets were all taken, she fought, whereas other people just couldn't afford to fight anymore, so they took the plea.
Hmm.
And because of their efforts, because of the Nelson family holding the line like they did, they took it all the way to a judge, and the judge dismissed everything and actually overturned the convictions
Yeah.
of the people who pled guilty.
Vacated some of the pleas. And I don't know. I think the Nelson family and their case is it should be in constitutional law classes and criminal law classes writ large, because of it is a primary example of how wicked the government can be. And then look, like Steve mentioned, when they collude, when you've got private industry colluding with government, and that's exactly what happened. Steve said it absolutely correctly. They were lobbying the government to go and charge people. So big, mighty Amazon and Jeff Bezos and his billions of dollars could get out of a deal that they started having, buyer's remorse on.
I believe
Have,
it was actually with Meta, which is just delicious.
mm-hmm,
How these guys all are on the same team together. There's an element in there, and again, I'll pull that up for those who didn't catch it. This is over at Uncover DC. The title of the piece by Amy Nelson is "When the Government Silences You by Taking Your Money." And there's a portion here that I do think is really important. They seized all of their assets, not just husbands and wives. I mean, they commingled their assets as you should do, but they also had separate businesses. She had a business interest called the Riveter. It was a woman's business consultation sort of affair that she was involved in. They took all of that as well. They seized everything. They had nothing, no cash even on hand to go feed their kids, 4 little girls, and they got all their money back. But did they? They got 85% of their assets back. The government took 15% of everything that they'd ever earned and owned and had it in the bank, where you were reliably informed that if you put your money in the bank, it's pretty safe.
mm-hmm.
15% was taken from them permanently, and they were only able to recover 85% when they agreed not to sue the government. That's what it is. And then I referenced it. The couple other guys that pled guilty, 97% guilty plea in the federal system, well, mostly because people are guilty and they're just trying to get the best deal they can. But how many are going through there and pleading guilty to something that they know they didn't do
Mm-hmm.
because they're not Amy Nelson and
Right.
stubborn and determined and willing to just take it all the way and just say, look, I can't leave my kids without any sort of resources to eat. I have to plead guilty. I mean, that's what happened to Mike Flynn.
Yeah, that's what happens to most people. I know it's different, and I know the Nelsons have been at it even longer. But there have been people in my life, even family, who ask or wonder. They won't ask me directly, even though they have the direct source. But I'll hear through other family members. Oh yeah, I was talking to so and so at the Christmas party, and they asked me, oh, why are they doing this? They're never going to win because you can't beat the federal government. Well, maybe you can't ever beat them fully, but you can beat them to the tune of 85%, which is just, even that is absolutely absurd. The government, in a case like this, they should be forced to pay back 500% because of the hardship that they put them through, because it was a weaponized government. And you know what, Steve? Actually, this is a great example for Mr. Raskin. This is a great example for him, because Amy Nelson was not some far right wing conspiracy theorist. If anything, she would probably identify as more of a liberal, left leaning person. And I would guess that her husband was probably similar in that regard, because that's typically how it goes. I know there's some anecdotal examples of, oh yeah, my wife is so far left, she's left of Trotsky, and I'm, over here in George W. Bush's camp because I like war or whatever. But but she's probably, when you look at her public persona, you might assume or think that she's conservative, but it's wherever you're getting that from, it's just born out of this example, because they targeted her and she realized how evil and wrong it was. And that doesn't make her a conservative or a liberal. It just makes her a victim. And so just because it's relative, well, I guess even in her case, it isn't always right leaning media who has picked up on some of her
No,
story.
I met Amy Nelson at Glenn Beck, November of 2022. So this was a couple years ago, and she'd already been through it. And yes, she was a bundler for Barack Obama.
Yeah. And
It,
and this is where the polarization that we see, it, when it gets down to the nitty gritty of humans and people. One thing that I cherish about the Nelson story is the 4-daughter piece. For I remember the first time Kyle had her on the show, Heidi and I, we've been suspended only maybe for a couple months at most, I think, and we listened to it, and it was just horrifying. But you could relate in a lot of ways, and It's like, I don't care what your politics are. Like, why would I care about that when you are just a target of government? That is the problem. And I will say that well, it goes back to Jamie Raskin again with his historical purview of the FBI. I think one of my most read Substack pieces is about MLK and COINTELPRO and that whole era, because it's wrong whether you target a conservative or a liberal or somebody in between. It's wrong when you target a Muslim or a Latin mass attending Catholic. It's wrong. It's every single time is wrong. So I don't in a lot of ways I don't really get the politicization of it. And it goes back to like when we were deposed, I told both Republican and Democrats this should not be a partisan issue, because I don't care. Like I said, if it's a Muslim or a Christian, if it's a conservative or a liberal, when the government is wrong, they're wrong, and they shouldn't be targeting their own citizens. Is what it really boils down to, or boils down to, I guess.
The O'Boyle meter going on over today, it's our goal every day to get O'Boyle to boil over. And look, I met Amy over at the Blaze. Next story actually comes from the Blaze, so good place to transition there. And this is written by friend of yours and mine, Joe Hanneman, and he's been all over still. He's continued to cover down on January 6 issues. Biden Harris, TOJ moves to imprison enfeebled nonviolent J6 defendant for 4 years. And look,
Jamie Raskin, your gaslighting is calling.
The stories of these are pretty legion. This one's pretty egregious because of the mistake in identity, I guess you could say, that they have here. They basically have to cover their butts and go hard at this guy. So
because they screwed up.
Yes. His name is Thomas Caldwell. And the feds raided him January 19th, so 13 days after the 6th. And they were sure he was a kingpin in the Oath Keepers.
A kingpin? Oh, gosh.
Yes. So Caldwell and his wife
Hold on. Okay, Steve, January 6th. You said January 19th?
Yes.
So 13 days. You're telling me that somebody in the FBI got a case together in 13 days.
Look, it was unprecedented. This was our 9/11, Garrett.
Yeah, that's right.
Just spare no expense here. Thomas Caldwell was there. He was at the Capitol. So that means he's probably an Oath Keeper. I'm an Oath Keeper, by the way. They initiated me. It's just for our monitors over at the FBI. Yeah. They brought me in. Proud member. They also got me this really cool hat that says ex-Fed, which I wear every once in a while on the American Radicals podcast.
Also to those minders over there in Sec D or whatever pit of the FBI that you're listening to us from, when Steve Friend becomes your boss, well, I would put it to you this way: don't clear out your internet history, okay? Because Steve's going to need that when he's back there and coming for the people who weaponize the government.
I actually believe you, Garrett, unlike our minders over at Congress. Your strong words are better than their strongly worded letters. Okay, so Thomas Caldwell and his wife, they went to J6. They never entered the building. They didn't commit any violent acts or vandalism. They walked up a set of stairs to the lower West Terrace and took selfies and then went home.
How dare they? They basically built a concentration camp all by themselves.
So he was arrested and he was put into isolation for 53 days.
Wow.
During which time he was beaten and kicked and mocked on his religion. Apparently the jailers were saying things like, "Where's your sky dad now?" to him.
Oh.
So they wanted to rope him in with the Oath Keepers because I guess he owns the farmland and he's a vet. He's a Navy vet and he's in his 70s. He allowed some of the Oath Keepers to camp on his property. I guess he lives relatively close to Washington, D.C. So they probably were like, "Hey, can we pitch a tent out there?" Maybe they have a camp or something like that. But because of that connection, they assumed that there was an actual official affiliation with the Oath Keepers. There wasn't. So he got roped into the big ones that they were trying to charge, like their Enrique Tarrios and all those who they put in prison for years and years and years. Anyway, they found him guilty of a single count tampering with evidence. And that is based on the fact that he had pictures that he took off his phone for space purposes and put on a jump drive, which he left in his house out in plain view, right?
Okay,
he didn't
dude.
shred anything.
Come on, man. Are you kidding me?
53 days in detention. Then he finally got held into house arrest he's now up to 833 days. His attorneys are asking for time served, and the government wants 4 years in prison.
You know,
That's your FBI. What
this,
proof do you need?
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because this guy shouldn't have even, this guy shouldn't serve another day. He's already overserved any time he even should have served. And
I don't know the crime.
the
He
actual
walked up a
crime.
flight of steps
Yeah.
on public area and took a picture
Right.
at the Capitol building, which people do by the thousands, hundreds of thousands every day.
This is what I've been thinking about lately, and I try not to get stressed or worried about it, but I do a little bit, because how do you fix this, Steve? How do you fix this? And when I say this, I mean just this, just January 6th, just cases like this. Is 4 years even enough to rectify all of these? These are atrocities. I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that. This is atrocious what happened. This type of thing is not supposed to happen in the alleged land of the free. In the alleged land of the free, yes, you have law. Yes, you have rules. Yes, people get arrested. Yes, people get punished for crimes that they commit. But you're going to throw a guy in prison and the government's asking for 4 years because he walked up a public flight of stairs and took some pictures. And then you're going to distort your case to the point where you say he tampered with evidence when you recovered the evidence. It's not like he took his phone and threw it in the frickin' Potomac. It's not like he said, "No, I wasn't there. I had no involvement. No, that's not me on." Because this is what I'm thinking, and I bring that up because that would be a 1001 18 USC 1001 obstruction violation if I lied to you.
They actually got him with the obstruction of official proceeding, but the Supreme Court tossed that out. And as a refresher, that's a tax law. Sarbanes-Oxley. I know about it because I was in college at the time of the Enron scandal, and I was an accounting student, so we had to learn all about it. And the premise was that Arthur Andersen shredded all these documents, and that was evidence tampering. But if you actually dig into that story, that's not what happened. The DOJ went after Arthur Andersen to discredit them, to put the screws to them so that they would flip on Enron. And that was the way that they sort of made the accusations. In reality, Arthur Andersen was shredding documents in accordance with their policy, because they can't just retain documents indefinitely. After a certain length of time, you shred to clean up space, and the statute of limitations is over. And they actually won on appeal. But at that point, Arthur Andersen was no longer a going concern. They had been rooted out. They're no longer. It was the big five accounting firms. It went down to the big four after that.
You know what that makes me think of? Do you remember this, Steve? Because we were both in the FBI when this happened. We got this email. The whole workforce got it. I wish I would have saved it. I wish I would have sent it to Congress. So it's just my memory. So maybe you can help refresh it. But we got this email about how they were changing the storage system to save space, just like this Enron case. But it's all digital now, or mostly digital. And it was something like the emails and certain things were going to automatically get completely purged. And looking back, I wonder how intentional that was. Because I imagine at this point it's been 2+ years. How many emails pertaining just to your case, or mine, or Kyle's, or Marcus's? How many of those are gone forever? Are you ever going to get them? And then along those same lines, with just the FBI in general, what damning information is gone because of these new safe saving systems? But you're gonna stick the screws to a guy for just following his company's policy, doing the same thing. Give me a break.
So that law was used, the obstruction of official proceeding, reinterpreted by a weaponized agency. Both the DOJ, the Department at Large, and the FBI used to go after. And because he was able to beat that, because of the Supreme Court saying that was an improper charge to bring, they got the evidence tampering, which is effectively the same thing that they're trying to get him for. And they're saying that that's a felony. So the FBI, DOJ arguing to put a Navy veteran who committed no crimes in prison for 4 years, after he's already undergone quite an ordeal. I think there's an Eighth Amendment argument here that cruel and unusual punishment falls nicely square in the middle of.
Yeah. And you know what? Honestly, the Eighth Amendment case law needs some refurbishing. So I wonder. Maybe people should start trying to bring that. But again, it's like the Amy Nelson case. How many people can just keep fighting? Not that many. You can. It's tiresome, it's laborsome, it's wearisome. And most people on one hand aren't cut out for it. And then even if they are, most people can't afford to do it.
Donald Trump's a billionaire, and the only reason he was able to do it is because the Republican Party and the whole bunch of small donations came from across the country to help him.
Exactly. I
I
mean, that's
mean,
a
that's
primary example.
that's the ultimate, right? He's a billionaire,
Billionaire.
and he can't even stand that on his own. I mean, he would have had to be liquidating Mar-a-Lago, which we were told was worth what, 16 cents?
Oh yeah.
All right.
But Steve,
Let's
Jamie Raskin told me it's not that he has seen no evidence of conservatives being targeted. So I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
I've seen no evidence that Jamie Raskin is a pirate, but he dresses like one anyway. Okay, let's have some fun with a couple of these because these are just good eating. If you know, you know, or maybe you don't know, but you have the attention span longer than 47 seconds and you read beyond the headline to paragraph 2 or 3, and it actually tells you what the FBI is claiming they did and what they actually did. So these are always fun. Let's play, Garrett. Press release from the United States Attorney's Office in the District of Vermont.
Huh.
Side note, almost everything that I get out of the FBI Boston field office is garbage.
Yeah.
So, all
Second
right.
side note, Wisconsin cheese is better than Vermontian cheese.
How dare you? I don't know. I don't have any dog in
I
that
don't know
fight.
anything. For all I know, Vermont sharp cheddar is pretty good. I'm not going to lie.
So the title is Rutland Woman Sentenced to 29 Months for Distribution of Cocaine Base. I don't know. I'm not a drug expert.
That's what they make crack out of, isn't it? It's like the mix, because I don't know what, because I'm not either, and I've never smoked crack. But
You're not Hallie Biden.
yeah, it's whatever they add to cocaine to make it into like a paste, and then I think they cook it so it gets hard, and then it crystallizes
All
and
right.
you break. I think I could be wrong about that. Any crack cocaine experts in the chat, let us know if we're wrong.
And we are definitely not doing a fed up on you. Anyway, Rutland woman sentenced. So, according to the court records, Stephanie Horvath middled drug sales for a rotating group of drug suppliers. So she was one of their sellers, not a kingpin, a middleman man. But she middled for them, and they were armed and dangerous. Horvath would distribute controlled substances herself, as well as have others distribute drugs from her hotel room. During the investigation that led to her arrest, 5 controlled purchases, which means that you either have an undercover or an informant go and buy the drugs. They were conducted by the Vermont State Police's Drug Task Force involving her hotel room.
The Vermont State Police, you don't say?
Yeah, and those purchases happened December of 2022 to June of 2023. No further information. What do you think the FBI's involvement was?
Some type of CHS. It's got to be, or undercover. They had to have somebody in this drug ring who said, "Hey, you got to go after Horvath," or they just adopted the case.
Yes, that's exactly what they did. They adopted the case because it involved armed and dangerous people.
Oh, there you go.
And cocaine is
drugs.
federally
guns and drugs.
Cocaine is federally, it's on the schedule. So
Cocaine's
they
a hell of a
just
drug.
adopted it. They probably were able to get a federal prosecutor to say, "Look, I'll prosecute that amount that you're able to see moving from your subject there." So the FBI, after the fact, after the drug sales happened 2 years ago, came in, opened up their case. So now we have fiscal year 23, 24, and 25. We've got a 3-year drug investigation, which you didn't have to devote any time, money, personnel, material. And you get to get the headline that says you put this evil, vile, vicious drug dealer, who, look, I'm not advocating on behalf of crack dealing, but she's going to prison for 29 months. And notice how they do the months. The federal system loves to do that. So she's doing less than 3 years in prison. It's all said and done. She'll do about 2 years in prison, which means that since she was arrested in 2023, she's about to get out when they put the press release out.
Why did it take so long? Why didn't they put it out?
Well, the reason that this took so long to get the sentencing, and just a little bit of subject matter expertise here, is the negotiating that goes on between your prosecutor and your defense particularly in the federal system, they'll be held in a local jail, and that is generally perceived to be easier time than going to a federal prison.
Going to the
So
big house.
so one of the negotiation carrots that they will offer the person is, I will stretch this out as long as possible
Mhm.
in the local jail. And then when it comes time, as long as you plead guilty, then we'll give you credit for that time served as well.
I
So
see.
that's what they did to her. I mean, let's just say I have a high level of confidence that that's what they did.
Yeah, it's
And
gotta be.
so as long as we're along the lines of
We got an
the
update. We got an update on cocaine base. I was wrong. I was way too far down
did you
the
just fed up somebody? Send it.
yeah. Hey, take a note on this screen name here. But no, in all seriousness, JR Deck 54, thanks for the update. Cocaine base, also known as coca paste, is a crude extract of the coca leaf that contains cocaine freebase. It can be smoked in cigarettes made from tobacco or cannabis. So there you go. It's a relatively unrefined version of cocaine is what it is. Not a more refined or more,
Is
I
that
don't
what
know.
they put in Coca-Cola?
They used to, I think. I think that's what gave it its special pop.
All right. All right. So another drug one. This is fun. Large scale drug trafficker. I love the title. Large scale drug trafficker from the Tri Cities, sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. You would think Pablo Escobar would get more than 7 years, but let's find out about him. Early in the morning of, take note, Garrett, February 24th, 2022.
2022,
So
okay.
almost 3 years ago. Dwight Norwood's girlfriend called the Benton County Sheriff's Office and told deputies that he had given her a black eye and he was chasing her in his Mustang
Oh
and was
no.
trying to shoot her.
Sounds like a domestic.
Yep. So a short time later, deputies spotted him driving near a gas station in Benton City. The deputies activated their emergency lights, attempted to arrest him, but he took off running. So
Oh
they
no.
used a K9 to track him down, located him near his trailer in Benton City, arrested him. They got a search warrant for the
Oh,
Mustang.
oh
In
boy.
and inside they found a fully loaded 45 caliber pistol and 800 fentanyl laced pills.
Oh no.
No further information. How is the FBI involved in this? I'm going to need some proof.
Adopted. They adopted the case.
It's a gun and drugs.
Yep.
3 years ago, that they put a major large scale drug trafficker
But
away.
Steve, we can't abolish the FBI. Who else would be doing this then? We can't. We need them. We need them, Steve. We need the FBI. We need them more than we need, I don't know, just about any other agency. We can't live without them. They need a new headquarters too, by the way, didn't you know?
2x the size of the Pentagon. But and these aren't weaponization, but it is showing that it's an agency that is kind of not doing very much for you, right?
No.
Other than when they're active, they're going after Navy veterans who were standing on the Capitol, or actually, I can't even say like housewives because Amy Nelson was working, but mothers of four who just happened to have a husband who worked for Amazon for a few years.
Yeah.
Like, if that's when they're really engaged. But otherwise, the actual things that people think, and they'll even say, I mean, I've seen video of Kash Patel saying like, hey, let's get these people out of the headquarters. Why aren't you out there going after violent criminals and drug dealers? It's not really federal most of the time, but that's the real assumption of what the FBI should be out there doing. And
Mhm.
they know that's the assumption, and they keep that image going with these sorts of adoptions where they don't actually do any work. They just do the office space and take the file from the locals over to the federal prosecutor and then stretch it out as long as they can so they can keep it on the books and then claim credit that they did something.
Yep.
That's your FBI. That's the proof right
And
there that it's not really objectively good or even necessary most of the time.
right. That's the piece for me is it's not necessary most of the time. And FBI agents get paid a very good wage, better than most wages for most people across the country. And you know how you can fix this piece right here? You got real police, you got the real police doing real police work, and they come across something that could potentially be a violation of federal law. Well, then their lieutenant or the detective on the case or whatever, they just go over to the federal courthouse instead of the county courthouse and say, "Hey, I think this one has all the hallmarks of Russian collusion." Or I'm sorry, wrong case, but of whatever crime there is, and then the federal prosecutor can decide, and you can just cut that piece of the FBI out because it's a huge piece of it, And I know this because I follow you on Twitter at Real Steve Friend. And if you don't, you should be too, because he tweets this stuff daily, just about. And every time it's the police doing the real work, or, some type of snitch or whatever. Oftentimes it's the police. It's just the police doing police work. And then the FBI taking the credit. And do we really need a giant part of the federal government to do that and to waste that much money on it? I don't think we do.
What do you think is the easiest route for the FBI to adopt most violent crimes?
Real police work. I
No, I
mean,
mean, like, what is the charge, the federal charge?
for a violent crime.
I mean, it's 922G, right?
Oh, the firearms.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's firearm charms. It's 18 United States Code 922G. We've kind of gone over it before, how it's overly broad and probably unconstitutional, but that is the weapon du jour, the law du jour that the FBI uses a lot of times to adopt cases. So I think that this one is just another example. It's a very simple, again, FBI Boston, thank you very much.
Which even this, I've thought about this because I had a 922 case, and I worked pretty closely with the ATF on it because I was in the FBI, and firearms. I looked at it as more of an ATF case, so I used them and their expertise a lot. And our victim specialist, her husband was an ATF agent, and he worked like 3 floors beneath us in the same building. So I would just go down there, and I'd be like, "Hey, man, can you? This is what I got. Can you help me out? And they would. But oftentimes I thought, why is the ATF not working this case? And it was because of the alleged domestic terrorism nexus. But I think this is another thing we need. Well, then we should just get rid of the ATF then. Well, we should get rid of them. Okay. I'm an American
It's
radical,
tough
Steve.
when
I
you
want to
are
get rid of the
definitely.
FBI and the ATF and the DEA, but I will pull back the reins a little bit and say, okay, if we're going to keep these agencies, if an FBI agent is working a 922 case, why do we have the ATF? Uh, I don't see why we need both. We don't. Only one of them should be doing that. So consolidate and cut, or I don't know, something along those lines, because what are we doing here? Or
Well, this
also
one,
drugs again. If the FBI is
DEA.
working drug cases, why do we have DEA? Do we need all of these? I don't think we do.
This isn't even domestic terrorism. This one's one of the most simple ones I've ever seen. Okay. Boston man charged with federal firearms offense. It means he didn't do anything else federally illegal. All right. That's what that means. According to the charging document, this happened in October of this year. So relatively quickly. Our bad guy's name here is Kyvan Ross. Kyvan was approached by law enforcement after driving a moped at a high rate of speed, and he didn't have a rear license plate.
Mm.
He accelerated at a speed directly at one of the officers before losing control and falling on the ground. Then he resisted arrest and was found in possession of a loaded Glock handgun with an obliterated serial number.
Oh no.
So he got involved in a chase. He fought with officers resisting arrest. I didn't attempt to shoot them, but was in possession of an illegal firearm. The FBI swoops in and takes credit for what the officers did, which was almost get run over by a moped and fight with a guy who was armed and dangerous.
That's it.
That's it.
FBI
That's it.
case.
You're welcome. You're welcome, America. The FBI is on top of things.
I want to know how long cases like this are open, because
This one's hard because it happened in October. So, man, they're going to really stretch to have to get this to the next fiscal year.
right.
They've got to get it through 12 months
Yeah.
after the arrest. So,
So
the
they
plea
moved this real quick.
negotiation,
Yeah.
all that, they'll probably get it passed into October of 2025. But 2 years is really where you're going to be done on this one.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane. Because I think of, as a cop, you make that arrest, you take the guy to county jail that night, and it starts right then, and maybe a year. I mean, that most likely that's not going anywhere, because that guy is just going to take the rap and come to some sort of plea agreement, and you're not even going to have to ever go testify, probably. But no, the FBI will take it, string it out for 2 years if they can, and yeah. Do we really need it? I mean, I don't think we do. I really don't.
All right, a couple of lighthearted ones, and these came to me via a couple of my moles from all across the fruited plain. FBI minders, they're everywhere.
Uh-huh.
Had a couple of revealed to me. One actually this morning, which I'll get to, but the older one a few days ago. Apparently, on the intranet within the FBI, there was a note that's put out. So every week, the special agents in charge of all the 55 field offices, it was 56, where they consolidated Memphis and Knoxville into Nashville now. So it's down to 55. 55 field offices, the special agents in charge, the top dog. They have this big nationwide conference call, and they kind of go over what's going on around the nation and bureau-wide and new policies getting put out. And there were some notes that they normally then permeate into the field. Okay. So this note came out from that meeting of the mucky mucks within the FBI. Quote, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion is conducting a study to determine why certain minority groups are having difficulty passing the physical fitness test. End quote. We need a study because people need jobs. So that'll be a year-long project. Do you really want to be on record as to saying that a person's color of their skin is impacting their ability to do push-ups? That seems like really, really racist. Could it be maybe that you're just getting unqualified people because your hiring practices are heavily weighted towards the color of skin rather than capability? I don't need to do a study on that.
No.
I was able to, mull that over in my mind for 14 seconds.
Mm-hmm. We've also heard recently that employees in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the FBI are threatening to resign over Kash Patel becoming.
Thank you.
Which, yes, please go away and shutter the doors on that whole.
That's Blazing Saddles, the sheriff with a gun held to his own head. I'm gonna do it.
It is. Which I find especially rich in light of this information and in light of Kash Patel being an Indian American. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's like a first generation. Like, his parents came from India.
Yes.
And the Office of DEI is going to threat, because that makes sense. That I thought you were all about DEI, but no, only if it's the right kind of DEI. But this physical fitness thing, this is a great example of how insane the woke ideology truly is. As if someone's pigmentation would ever have anything to do with how many push-ups, sit-ups, 300-meter sprint, and mile-and-a-half run. If anything, I'm a white guy. I'm going to run slower than some ethnic groups. And I'm big. I'm a big dude. Push-ups are not always my forte. Either are sit-ups. Sprinting certainly isn't. Yet I was always able to pass because you put in the work, you put in the effort. Your skin color has literally nothing to do with it at all.
You are way, way radical today. All right. I got one more, and I actually got the receipts I could show you. I couldn't get the, they don't put equity in it. They just go Office of Diversity and Inclusion. I guess they're trying to evade the search features, I guess, when the Trump administration comes in and just puts an axe to all that stuff. But this one given to me this morning, today is December 5th, 2024. And this is guidance for teleworking because of the chest cold. You don't want to get that evil, vicious election variant to hit you.
Oh,
Email.
This must be someone who follows Taylor Lorenz, who just had that face.
Stop raw dogging the air.
Yeah.
All right.
T-shirt. Kyle said on his show, I think yesterday, that he wants us to make it into a T-shirt.
This is one of two screenshots that I got from it. It is guidance for how employees who are teleworking, mostly headquarters people because of coronavirus, are to input their hours and their time into the system, the timekeeping system. So the 5-day work week.
Yeah, the 3 hours they work the whole week, if that.
Yes. Here is page 2. And they are giving all that and all of it. If you want to get more information regarding the telework and remote work program, because you can enroll in it if you want, you got to go to the link at the bottom, which says Work Life Program. It's still being offered to employees of the FBI that they can just stay in their jammies all day long. What proof do you need?
Yeah. No kidding. I mean, I January 20th can't come soon enough. It can't. And I think I mentioned this the other day. I've had a little uptick in current FBI personnel reaching out to me.
You too.
Yeah, interesting, right? And part of me is kind of like, whatever. I'm an open book. I do a podcast with fellow suspendable Steve Friend, the guy I testified with. You remember? You guys remember that? So I don't care what you text me or say or whatever. But most, by and large, it's people who are, at least they claim that they hear that most people are excited for Akash Patel to come in as director and see what changes can be made, because I really do think that by and large the majority of people in the FBI, we've said it before, they see the same things we saw. They didn't step into the gap for whatever reason, and now they're hoping for change, and they know that real change needs to come. And I don't know, I'm eager for it. I really am curious to see what's going to happen to a place like the FBI, and honestly government as a whole. I'm super stoked about Doge, and because our country, if we're going to continue to exist at the top of countries in the world, we got a lot of fixing to do. And I don't know if 4 years is enough time, but
Put this idea out there. I don't think you ever hear about this. You always hear this is a once in a lifetime opportunity.
you do hear that
This
a lot.
is a twice in a lifetime opportunity. How many times in life do you get a second chance to do the right thing when you know you screwed up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a time a couple years ago when you had an opportunity and the call came and you had the chance to say, "Here I am," and you just didn't. You punked out. Whatever it was, however you rationalized it in your head, let's be honest, down to brass tacks, you punked out.
Right.
You get a second chance. A new director comes in. It's a new day, a complete reformation, a renovation, bordering on a demolition. And you get a chance to get on board one last time.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll have to forgive us. And you and I are going to have to really temper our default setting, which is just say like, bleep you weren't there. Twice. I'm going to look at you with a skeptical gaze, but you do have a second chance. Don't punk out. That's all I'm going to say for now.
Mm-hmm.
I have a cool palate cleanse about real cops, how real cops are really cool. But Garrett, what's your closing thoughts for the day?
Steve, it's as if you were a prophet. What you said ties directly into what I thought to be ultra fitting for today, Isaiah 6:8. But I'm gonna go back a little bit. I'm gonna start in verse 6. It says, "Then one of the seraphim," which if you don't know, that's an angel. "One of the seraphim flew to me." This is Isaiah speaking, "having in his hand a burning coal that he had taken with tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth and said, 'Behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for.' And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, 'Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?' Then I said, 'Here I am, send me.'" And with what Steve just said, with what we've gone through, what we've been through, many of you know, Isaiah 6:8, I referenced it when we testified. It's certainly up there for all suspendables and kind of what led us down this path. But I think going back a little bit, and what it said in verse 7 is fitting for what Steve just said about the second chance that we have, and that people who really have that second chance now to just step into the gap and do the right thing. The angel told Isaiah, "Your guilt is taken away and your sin atoned for." So move forward and say Isaiah 6:8 with us. "Here am I, send me." You have your chance.
And we have our chance here to look at real law enforcement, not law enforcement cosplay, and a cop kind of doing the right thing at the right time to a guy who just kind of messed up a little bit. No harm, no foul. This is how I wish all these troopers were, but unfortunately they're not.
couple of things. You passed me right here, over 100. You're just driving a little bit aggressive. I understand it's a nice bike. I get it. That's why I don't have one of these. I'll run you real quick and I'm gonna let you get out of here. Okay. You need to be reading that every day.
Yes, sir.
Man, I'm just, like I said, this pep talk, you listen or not, I just don't want to scoop you up out here.
Hit someone?
Several.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. You guys got a YouTube reputation to keep up. Yeah, dude.
Man, I want you to be safe. I get it. I mean, if I had one of them, I would probably haul ass too, but
yeah.
Just try not to do it like on 70. A little pep talk, just try to slow down, all right?
All right, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
There you go. Just letting him guy go on his crotch racket going over 100 miles an hour. And the guy had a tattoo, for those who are listening, on his forum that said, "Don't die." He said you should read that every day.
You know, I can support this on occasion. I never was a fan of writing speeding tickets, but if you're going that fast, I mean, you're getting a ticket. Sorry. Even if you're nice and chill, you're getting a ticket.
You're getting the ticket or the lecture. Don't ever give them both. That's
Exactly
the iron
right.
rule.
Exactly
Don't
right.
break it. All right. And we've lectured you enough for the day. So thanks for joining us today on the American Radicals podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you do smash the thumbs up and follow the channel if you haven't. If you listen to the audio format on iTunes and Spotify, iHeart, make sure that you give us a subscribe there to get the automatic updates and also a 5-star rating. We'll be back with you Saturday, 10:30, same time, same place here on Rumble, rumble.com/amradpod. Until then, guys, have a great day.
You've been listening to the voice of the Suspendables on the American Radicals podcast. Follow us on rumble.com/amradpod.
Everybody out in the world.